Finally, I was starting to think I'd never get this project off the ground. But at last, my new computer is here, and as a celebration of both that and my very first vocal countdown, I'm dedicating a list to my very first console. No, not that one. Yeah, that one. Like most gamers my age, I first got into gaming around the 32-bit era. But, unlike many of my colleagues, my early gaming days were spent on Sony's debut console, the original PlayStation, and I loved every single one of those days. It wasn't too long after that I got my own Nintendo 64 as well, but the original PlayStation 1 was the best console I could have been introduced to gaming on, period. And now I present a list of the top 10 games that I think the PlayStation has to offer. Check it out. Let's start this list off with a Star Wars game, shall we? No, don't worry, it's not Masters of Terrasicasi, or however you pronounce that. No way, that game sucks! Nope, at number 10 we have Star Wars Demolition. This is basically like Vigilante 8 with a Star Wars coat of paint, which is actually a pretty fitting description from the same developers as the box art is almost worryingly keen on reminding us. But this game manages to stand out thanks to its credit system. It's actually a little more like Rogue Trip and its cash system, but I actually like Demolition better because its credits are more valuable. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Yes, this is technically a car combat game, but going back to that coat of paint joke I made a moment ago, it's a damn good coat of paint. Integrating Star Wars into this genre was a genius idea. While there aren't a whole lot of recognizable characters in this game, it's the vehicles out of the main attraction. All of them are a blast to play, and they're each balanced with their own stats of speed, handling, armor, etc. They range from a land speeder to a snow speeder, an AAT tank, an ATST, and even the friggin' Rancor, who is a monster! I mean, its special attack is just going apeshit on the enemy! As I said before, your battling in this game revolves around your credits, which you earn by destroying enemies, hitting them with charge moves, and winning rounds. You then spend them on shield and power reloads during each round. Like I said, it's like Rogue Trip, but this time there's more strategy to it, as you need to finish the tournament with a certain number of credits to unlock new stuff. So it makes you think a little more about how much you might have to spare just to keep yourself going until the next round. And this game can get pretty tough too, especially when facing off against 2 or 3 enemies at once. Throw in a number of environmental hazards and you really gotta play smart. But even all that isn't enough to make the game overly frustrating, and I'd recommend this game to any car combat fan who likes a decent challenge. Now, I haven't seen anything from the Dreamcast version of this game yet, and I hear it's a bit easier on the eyes, but the PS1 version of Star Wars Demolition is definitely a game to check out. I mean, come on! How can you hate on a Star Wars game where you can play as both Boba Fett and Darth Maul? Remember Gex? Chances are, if you were a PS1 player, you've at least heard of the smart aleck wisecracking Gecko, Gex. Gex was pretty much Crystal Dynamics' mascot. I mean, hell, he was even on their friggin' logo. It was actually tough for me to decide which of Gex's games would end up on here, but in the end, I had to go with the second game, Enter the Gecko. This game picks up 2 years after the first game, in which Gex has basically isolated himself from the rest of the world, watching shit tons of TV, natch, until he's confronted by a couple of government goons trying to get him back into the action. After a pretty one-sided, negotiation,
I give a little back.
he eventually goes for it. What follows is what can only be described as a trippy adventure through the twisted and quirky train wreck that is pop culture. The levels are nice and big, and actually have a pretty good amount of variety going for them. At one point you could be in a wacky cartoon world, popping shrooms and getting crushed under fat ladies. The next moment you're in an old-style martial arts flick, shooting cannonballs at papier-mâché dragons, only to finish out the day to be thrown into a giant monster battle while Godzilla's out to lunch. So yeah, this game rocks. The only real complaint I have on it is the camera. It sucks. Like, it really sucks. But aside from that, I am really disappointed that Gex isn't with us anymore, but his legacy definitely lives on. I haven't played the original Gex game yet, and a lot of players say it's the best of the three, but Enter the Gecko will always be one of the craziest and most nostalgic games of my childhood. Oh, and by the way, Sony, while we're on the subject of PS1 mascots who are no longer with us, let's bring this list back to the medieval times. Literally. Yep, at number 8, we have one of the biggest surprise hits of the 32-bit era, the original Medieval. Now, there's really only one thing that you need to know about Medieval. You can get a fire-breathing dragon head. That's awesome. Okay, hands down, best fighting game on the PlayStation 1. Tekken 3 was where the Tekken series truly began to make a name for itself. While the series had technically always been a 3D fighter, this installment was when emphasis on actual 3D movement was introduced, and the idea of sidestepping came to fruition. The funny thing is, in the time leading up to Tekken 3's console release, a lot of fans were skeptical about it because it was the first Tekken console port that wasn't an arcade-perfect port. Luckily, though, Namco compensated for this and jam-packed Tekken 3 with a crap ton of extras, a practice that would become a staple of future Tekken console ports. There's Tekken Force Mode, which is basically an old-school side-scrolling beat-em-up game. There's Tekken Ball Mode, which is odd, but good for a few laughs. It also features console-exclusive characters to unlock, and the absolute best-looking CGI cutscenes on the whole system. As for the fighting itself, while the PS1 version of the game runs a bit slower than the original arcade cabinet, understandably, it's undoubtedly more fluid and more balanced than any of the previous installments. Tekken 3 also holds a special place for me personally, due to it being both the first Tekken game I ever played and the first fighting game I ever played. While it's not my favorite Tekken game, that would be 5, I still believe that Tekken 3 stands out as one of the best in the series, and a prime example of a PlayStation 1 classic. Long live the King of Iron Fist. So, Mega Man Legends, then. This has to be one of the most underrated game series of all time, and honestly, I can kinda see why. Mega Man Legends is a 3D action RPG, which is worlds different from the 2D platforming formula established by the original Mega Man and Mega Man X series. But different doesn't always mean bad, and the Legends series stands out for me at least, having enjoyed it both more than Mega Man 8 and X's 4 through 6. Set supposedly thousands of years after the events of the original series, Mega Man Legends follows the adventures of Mega Man Volnut as he searches for new power sources on a now flooded planet, along with his best friend and mechanical genius Roll and adoptive grandfather Barrel. One of the most common complaints I've heard against this game, besides the obvious, is its control scheme. And while it is a bit unorthodox at first, I personally found them very easy to get the hang of. The RPG bits in the game come in the form of its weapon upgrades. Whereas the original games had you stealing the weapons of bosses, in Legends, weapons are built from parts that you find scattered across the overworld and in dungeons that can be equipped and upgraded to your liking. They range from standard machine guns, grenades, rocket launchers, etc., to some really interesting exotics. The vacuum arm is one of the most useful items in the game despite not actually being a weapon, and the shining laser even rivals Mega Man 2's metal blades in terms of raw power. Bottom line, if you're a Mega Man fan who's tired of the traditional Mega Man formula, or just an action RPG fan in general, then I'd recommend these games definitely. With an interesting story, lovable characters, and some actually really good voice acting, save for Mega Man's infamous reverse puberty between the two games, the Mega Man Legends series stands out as one of the most unique series on the PlayStation 1, and I hope that it does get a better rep. And Capcom, come on, just give us a third game already. Let's face it, we've all got that one game where it just seems like no one else plays it, or in some cases even knows it exists. And this is mine! Hell yes, Future Cop. I love this game so much. and I hate that I literally never hear anyone else talk about it. At all. Future Cop is a game about stopping criminals in the future with a giant transforming f***ing robot.
This is X1 Alpha, LAPD's best weapon in the war against crime. The crime lord's edge and firepower is over.
One complaint I can hold against this game is that it really does only have 2 modes, but it's excusable because they're just so damn fun to play, and not to mention they're both multiplayer. The first is the campaign mode, which takes you through futuristic dystopian versions of real Los Angeles areas, such as Griffith Park, Long Beach, and LAX Airport. While this mode is fun, there is one pretty major problem that does hamper it. There are no checkpoints. At all. Yeah, it's one of those games. You die, you go right back to the beginning. The other mode is Precinct Assault. This is basically like a capture point tower defense hybrid in which 2 players earn points through kills and claiming turrets scattered throughout the stage. They then spend those points on tanks to try and take the other player's base, attack choppers to defend their own base, and to claim outposts on each corner of the map, which each spawn tanks and choppers that are a bit tougher than those found at your normal base. This mode also gets bonus points for having one of the best introduction videos to anything ever.
Destroy the enemy walker, earn points, and send him back to his base crying like a baby. Remember? Hover tanks, turrets, points, crying. Beautiful.
This is one of the things I like most about this game, its sense of humor. A lot of the cutscenes have some really funny moments in them, with special mention going to the end credits, and even the in-game radio chat is occasionally funny to listen to. It's a real shame that the studio who developed this game went under not long after its release, because they were really onto something good here. Future Cop. When criminals stir, there's only one motto to go by.
Serve, protect, survive.
X1 Alpha, 2 lane in progress. 14 officers down, need assistance. Code 77.
This is the LAPD. Put down your... Thank you for your support.
X1 Alpha.
Let's take a quick look back at the first entry on this list for a sec. In that segment, I brought up a bunch of other different games, didn't I? But aside from genre, what did all of those games have in common? Oh, I'll tell you what they had in common. Roots. These games are all rooted in a series of games that are practically synonymous with Sony and PlayStation. Oh yeah, you know where I'm going with this. Hit it! Twisted Metal, baby. Oh yeah. As a kid, this series was where I immediately went whenever I just wanted to blow some shit up. And as a young adult, I now have better appreciation for the series' trademark dark sense of humor and mechanics. While the original was always a sleeper hit, it was the second game where things got real. Twisted Metal 2 introduced the main lineup of characters that players would come to recognize most, and included some of the most memorable stages and interactive environmental hazards, the most famous of which being the destructible Eiffel Tower in Paris. Twisted Metals 3 and 4 were okay in my eyes. While the first game did take some getting used to, the fourth game improved drastically with more hidden areas in each stage and the series' first instance of a character creation mode. Finally, there's the spin-off, Small Brawl, which I just found to be hilariously fun. But in spite of the series' humor and gameplay, it's the characters that are a real selling point, being fittingly colorful and even disturbing in some cases, which is odd considering that, for the most part, all of the characters are closed up in their vehicles. But it makes sense in the end during one of the series' famous ending moves. After becoming the sole survivor of the tournament, your character comes face to face with the host, Calypso, who says he'll grant the winner a single wish, no matter how impossible or impractical. This is where Twisted Metal's dark humor really comes into play, as these endings can range from purely silly to shockingly grim. But then again, I'd defy you to name one form of media where wishes don't end up backfiring. In the end, though, the Twisted Metal series is a PlayStation 1 staple, and I highly recommend it to anyone who's interested to seeing what Sony's consoles exclusively offer.
No one will be safe. I promise you that. Good luck, driver. Welcome to Twisted Metal.
Oh, it was hard trying to decide which Spyro game would end up on here because all three of them are undoubtedly excellent. In the end, though, I had to go with Year of the Dragon. Out of the three Spyro games on the PlayStation 1, this is the one that I remember most fondly. This is what I consider to be the definitive Spyro game, with tons of worlds to explore, more characters to play as, and a bunch of insane mini-games, except for Yeti boxing. Seriously, how in the bloody ass did they make a boxing match between two abominable fucking snowmen suck? Well, aside from that, the rest of the game is pretty damn flawless, keeping the legacy of one of the most beloved video game characters of the 90s alive and well. If you haven't already played this game, play this game. No two ways about it. Just get it, play it, dig it. Before we get to number 2, I just want to say that I tried real hard to try and find another game that could take this spot. And in the end, I just couldn't. So, from a disclaimer like that, you've probably already picked up what I'm getting at. Yeah. At number 2, we have one of the most overrated games of all time, Final Fantasy VII. Now, keep in mind, even though I agree that this game is praised a bit more than necessary, that doesn't mean it's a bad game. I mean, it's on this spot for a reason. Final Fantasy VII was a game full of firsts. It was the first Final Fantasy game to be rendered in 3D, as well as the first Final Fantasy game to appear on a non-Nintendo console. But that isn't why I love this game. No. I love this game because I really do find it genuinely entertaining. The addictive materia system and massive amount of hidden items and areas are incentive enough for me to replay it today, and interchangeable scenes and dialogue keep things fresh with each playthrough. Look guys, liking Final Fantasy VII isn't weird, it isn't a crime, and it isn't a sin. What is looking down on a perfectly great game just because it's praised more than necessary or is hailed as one of the best games ever. I mean, games don't garner that kind of rep for nothing. It does have its fair share of problems. Some characters are more memorable than others, and maybe could have been translated a little better. But none of these problems are so severe enough to stick out from the rest of the game as a whole. So whether you like Final Fantasy VII or not, you can't deny the kind of impact it's had on the industry, and it deserves at least a certain amount of respect. As for me, I actually don't see it as the best game ever. Hell, I don't even see it as the best Final Fantasy game ever. That being said though, the fact that I still enjoy it so much today, combined with the fact that I played it more than any other PlayStation 1 game during my childhood, more than qualifies it to be what I think is the best PS1 game of all time. Is what I would be saying if this was number 1.
Wait, what?
Lost? How about a recap? Number 10, Star Wars Demolition. Number 9, Gex Enter the Gecko. Number 8, Medieval. Number 7, Tekken 3. Number 6, the Mega Man Legends series. Number 5, Future Cop. Number 4, the Twisted Metal series. Number 3, Spyro Year of the Dragon. And number 2, Final Fantasy VII. So what game could possibly take the number 1 spot over Final Fantasy VII? Well, what do you think?
Sony Computer Entertainment America presents a Universal Interactive Studios production. A game created and developed by Naughty Dog.
That's right. Number 1 on this list could be none other than
Crash Bandicoot 4.
Come on, you cannot talk about the PlayStation 1 without bringing up Crash Bandicoot. Crash was practically the console's mascot. And for good reason, too. Like his rival Spyro, all of Crash's main games on the PS1 were awesome, but none of them even came close to Warp. I mean, I can't even begin to list the reasons why this game kicks so much ass. But I'll try.
Do or do not. There is no try.
Okay, right. First off, this game looks amazing. Everything from Crash himself to the enemies you kill to the boxes you break. Everything in this game is vivid and detailed. Second off, the levels. Every single level in this game, with one very minor exception, is a blast to play. Like, even the underwater levels. Third, you can ride on a dinosaur. Need I say more? Warped was also the game where the series' time trial mechanic was introduced, which, combined with the usual crystals and gems, gave the player even more incentive to stick around. Combine that with some catchy as hell music, a great cast of characters who were voiced surprisingly well, as well as some really brilliantly hidden secrets, this game has got it all. It looks great, it sounds great, it plays great. I'm the disciple of the Hado, and Crash Bandicoot Warped is hands down the greatest PlayStation 1 game of all time. And to send us off, take it away, Crash!